Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I want to give you today a little update on the China bug situation in Germany. The topic is once again dominating public discourse and our media, and that is because the numbers have gone up, but this time something is fundamentally different, of course. Depending on the region in Germany, between 80 and 60% of the population roughly is already vaxxed. So how can that be true? In fact, German politicians are now advertising a third shot for people. They want to start with the vulnerable groups, of course, but they say that everybody needs a third shot now. That is the only thing we can do. So a lot of people who believed the politicians all along and were convinced that these measures and these injections are helping, well, they have second thoughts now. Some of them double down, and because they are used to mental gymnastics, they are basically mental yoga masters by now. Their minds were twisted or trained, let's say, from so many other topics and so many other incidents that they have no problems bending reality to their ideology. And the others, well, they are really getting doubts now. In today's video, I want to first present to you the official numbers so that you know what is going on and where it is going on. Then I want to do what I sometimes like to do, and that is show you news from 1 year ago that hasn't really aged well, or from another perspective has aged really well, depending on what you want to get from it. Because it is important now to show people what these politicians were saying just 1 year ago, let's say, and what these corporations were claiming that their stuff can do. Let's just say people actively forget these things, or these stories are overwritten in their minds by news stories that are designed to overwrite that stuff. And then I want to give you my take on the situation, of course. But before we get into all of that, a big shout out and a big thank you to all my supporters and my subscribers. Like, share and subscribe if you like my material, and if you want to support this channel, you can do so via Patreon or Subscribestar. The links are down below. Alright, do you still remember the video I made where all the new infections were basically in the west of Germany or in the north, and in the east there was basically nothing, and nobody mentioned that in the media? And now that the situation is obviously reversed, everybody is saying, oh, look at these people in Thuringia and Saxony, they're not vaccinated, so of course their numbers are that high. So my prediction once again was 100% accurate. Not that it was very hard to make that prediction, but yeah, it was accurate. So the daily new infections are reaching once again the heights of last winter of 1 year ago, where the peak was happening so far. So we're up there once again. And while earlier this autumn, most of the cases were, as I said, in the north and the west, now they are at the borderlands in Bavaria and in Saxony and also Thuringia. When you look at fatalities, however, we're nowhere near where we were last December, even though our caseload is already that high. But of course, according to the media and the politicians, these metrics are outdated and they're not to be used anymore. What counts now is the hospitalization rate or something like that, or how many free hospital beds we have. And here I have to say that overall in Germany, it looks still very good. There are some isolated districts where we have a lot of patients. Not all of them are China bug patients, mind you. If you look at it, there are a handful of China bug patients, and all the other patients are there for other causes. But if you want to make sense out of these numbers, you have to have additional information, and that is that over the last years, and in the last year especially, hospitals were reducing beds dramatically. They were changing these statistics, they were changing the metrics for what is a free ICU bed and what is not, and the overall number of beds was drastically reduced over the last year. I made a dedicated video about that. It had a lot to do with financial incentives for the hospitals. Many health experts agree on that. I'm not the only one who says that. It really looks like the hospital organizations or the companies who run these hospital chains, they are really interested in making it look like there was a scarcity by artificially decreasing the number of free ICU beds. And of course, ICU beds are not generally there and staffed and empty. They cost a lot of money, so you would create the capacity there when you need them. And it seems like that this is not happening at the moment. And here you can see the vaccination status in Germany. As I said, between 60 and 80%, but if you look really carefully on the graph in the lower right, you see that there is a new color appearing, and that is the Auffrischungsimpfung, the booster shot. They are starting now to administer third doses, starting with vulnerable groups and old people, which is pretty much the same thing, I guess. And when you think about our media and political system, once again, it's so funny. If you said that like 6 months ago, that this shot is not really a vaccine because it doesn't permanently or for a long time make you immune against anything, it just gives you some antibodies maybe and lessens the adverse effects or the bad symptoms, but it's not really a vaccine like I'm used to the definition of the word. And if you said that half a year ago, they would have branded you a conspiracy nut job or something. But now, what is that? There are studies from Israel that say that depending on your age, after a certain while, the effect of the full vaccination after 2 doses wears off. No, really? Well, if scientists from Israel are saying that, it must be true. And of course it is true, because this is not a real vaccination in the old sense of the word. As you know, the definition of vaccination has changed very recently for that purpose. Because 2 years ago, this, whatever it is, would not have been classified as a vaccine at all. And what are they doing actually in Israel? Because Germans are now saying, look at Israel, we must learn from Israel, we must do it like they do. Well, what are they doing there? They are actually saying if your second vaccination is older than 6 months, you're counted as unvaccinated now, and your green card is revoked, and you're one of these unvaccinated people. You need to get a third and a fourth shot now. And what else do these studies say? They say that really old people, like 70, 80 years or something, they would lose their protection already after 3 months. So that means you would need 12 injections a year then or something, or if you just need an additional booster shot or something, well, then it's 4 after the first 2-time vaccination. And if you don't comply with that, well, you lose your entrance ticket for society. And this is something that nobody has told the German normies so far. But this is of course what's coming, I think, because Israel does it. And let me just tell you, one of the reasons why the numbers have been going up so much is of course that vaccinated people are acting like they don't carry the virus. I've seen this in my private life, I've seen this at work. These vaccinated people, they break a lot of the rules and they socialize again. Yes, they go to bars, they go to clubs, they do all these things. And hey, I think that everybody should be able to do that, not just them. But they show their green certificate or whatever, their green card at the door, and then they can act like this virus didn't exist. And then they wonder that they are tested positive and that they're sick in bed and that they infected a bunch of other people that they were partying with. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that everybody should be allowed to do that if they wanted to do that. And there are many positive examples, like if you look at the Amish community in the United States or some African countries, what you see is they more or less ignored that thing and now they have herd immunity. But what we're doing here in Germany is some weird thing in between, where we first isolate ourselves for 1.5 years, then we get some dubious pharmaceutical concoction that doesn't really help, and then they go on and ignore the existence of the virus for the most part. Yeah, that is probably not the way to do it. And now, just like I have promised in the beginning, a little reminder to some people who have a short memory span. In the US, you hear a lot about Pfizer, and you probably know that this company has a very bad reputation. What you might not know is that the actual vaccine is only produced by Pfizer, but it was invented by a German company that's called BioNTech. And the head and founder of that company is a Turkish gentleman called Ugur Sahin. So he leads that company together with his wife Özlem Türeci. And at the end of April, so that is a couple of months ago, he claimed that Germany will have reached herd immunity by July or August at the latest if everybody gets an injection of his pharmaceutical concoction. And what did he say a couple of months earlier at the end of February? Well, he said that if you are vaccinated, you are no longer infective. That means once you are vaccinated twice, you can no longer give anybody the virus. So it is up to you to decide if that was a cold and calculated lie in order to sell his product, or if it was just, oh, we didn't know better at the time. And that was a time when many people said that, well, there are not enough studies, there is not enough data, and the mainstream says, oh, it has been studied, there is a lot of data, we know everything. Well, obviously you didn't know everything, and I wonder what else you didn't know. So let that sink in once again. He said that with his vaccine, a country could reach herd immunity, and he said that once you are vaccinated, you are classically immune, sterile immune. You can no longer pass on the virus to anybody else. These were his claims, absolutely wrong, of course. So once again, I hear it all the time right now. I'm fully vaccinated, but I still have it, and I passed it on to someone, but I was fully vaccinated and that person was too, and so on and so on. Well, the truth is that especially in older people, once again, the effect is declining over the month, and technically speaking, if they are taking their own propaganda seriously, they would have to actually revoke this vaccination status from people after 3 or 6 months depending on age. But I really wonder what happens to the normies' brains if they started doing that in Germany like they do in Israel. Would they feel betrayed? Would they get angry? Or would they just say, oh yeah, I'm so grateful that I get another chance to show that I'm an obedient serf and that I'm a much better citizen than all these evil people who are not playing along? If you ask me, I think the second group is actually the bigger group, in Germany at least. Alright, so today I showed you what is going on in Germany when it comes to this China bug topic. The numbers are going up again. We are talking now about booster shots. People are, of course, talking about only allowing certain things for fully vaccinated people, but as I told you today, that makes very little sense when they can still get sick and they can still pass on the infection. And I think the main driver of these numbers is at the moment not the unvaccinated people. They might be responsible for the severe cases at the moment still, sure, but I think the main driver of the infection numbers in general are these fully vaccinated people that are the majority in many places in Germany and that are just acting as if this virus didn't exist. And don't get me wrong, I think more power to them. They should be able to do that, but I'm saying everybody should be able to do that, and they are taking the risk then. That is what I said from the very beginning, and that is of course still my opinion. And I also reminded you what this pharmaceutical entrepreneur said earlier this year, just a couple of months ago, and how his statements have aged. Let me know what is going on in your country as always and what you think about this in the comments down below. Take care. Servus, Kameraden.